You've made it to Chiro Hustle Live. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Imaging Services, Mahalo Wellness, Chiro Health USA, The Goodman Factor, Chiro Moguls, Local Gold, Chiro Thin, McCaffrey's Clinical Mentoring, and Chiropractic Rocks. Let's hustle.
I have the opportunity today to interview Garrett Soldano, DC, out of Michigan. And you've been on the front lines, man. You've been doing some really fundamental work up there, joining arms with the future of Michigan and seeing what we can do to bring awareness to. We have a run of topics that we're going to cover today. And just to preemptively let people know what we're going to be discussing, we're going to talk about censorship, masks and social distancing, the media hype, and how our country and states are starting to be ruled by tyrannical governors. We're going to talk about small businesses losing their business, domestic violence and what that's doing to our communities, and the rise of addiction, suicide, and overdose. So all these things kind of tie into this economic blunder that we're in right now with this overstepping reach of where we are as we know it to be the United States of America. So Garrett, welcome to Chiro Hustle live stream.
Oh, thanks for having me, my man.
Yeah. So give us all kind of like a snapshot of what's happening right now in Michigan and the movement that you and your tribe have started.
Well, like many of us out there, nobody really knew what this COVID was going to do, right? This pandemic. So we're all kind of walking on eggshells, as we say, to really kind of place ourselves like what's going to happen. And so everybody was just kind of like, what do we need to do? Because anybody tells you from the beginning, this is exactly what we need to do this, they're lying. We don't know. We're not going to know until this is all over, when we can revisit all the data and we can really look at the world data and understand, okay, what worked and what didn't work. And so like a lot of us out there, I didn't know what to expect. And so when our governor said to quarantine, I was like, okay, we have to do what we need to do right now. We have to see what this is going to go. But after the 2 weeks of quarantine and the data start being released, then you're like, okay, I'm getting all this misinformation. They're saying one thing, they're doing another. All this data was coming out, wasn't making sense. But then on April 9th, what happened in our state is our governor brought down her emergency orders and her executive orders, which took away our constitutional rights and freedoms. She literally closed down what we could and could not go to. We could not fish anymore and go to these public parks. We could go on a kayak, but we couldn't go on a motorboat. You couldn't buy certain goods at these big box stores, but you could go to your local hardware store and get the same thing. And so all these kind of things just kind of turned something inside me out. And I started initially the Facebook group out of frustration. I wanted a voice because like many chiropractors out there and like many people, we really don't give our perception on a lot of issues because we're really afraid of the social backlash. Because I was that guy. I wanted to stay in the shadows. I wasn't going to go out there and I wasn't going to be publicly talking about a lot of things because I just didn't want to deal with the public backlash and the social backlash of these things. And so when she brought down her executive orders and took away our sacred values, our citizens' rights, and our constitutional freedoms, I just had it. And so I had to stand up. And when I did it initially, it was for my own selfish reasons for me to have a voice. And so I started the Facebook group called Michiganders Against Excessive Quarantine. And I remember I started like 3:36 in the afternoon. And I even got a screenshot of it. One member, it was me, So I had it all started and I went to bed that night and there's 500 people that joined like 5 hours later. And I was like, wow, there's 500 people that feel just like I do. I was like, this is great. I went to bed, woke up the next morning to go to work. And it grew to like 5,000 overnight and then 8,000. And by the end of that second day, it grew to 100,000. Then another 100,000 the second day. Third day, it grew to 300,000. So we grew a group of over 300,000 people in 3 days. And that's when the censorship of Facebook started because we were maxed out because you can only get 10,000 invites at a time. If we've maxed that for the first 3 days, we couldn't keep up. And after the end of that third day, it dropped all the way down to 500 to 1,000 people a day. So Facebook started to censor us. You couldn't find us on Facebook. Even when you typed in, people were losing things. And so that I knew that censorship was there, but I never experienced it personally. And for the next 4 weeks, we grew to like 1,500 to 2,000 people a day, all the way until they booted us off Facebook. We were almost up 400,000 people by the end of that first month.
Wow. So censorship has definitely put a ripple effect into the momentum that is needed right now. So you grew this group to a massive numbers because of necessity, and then Facebook starts to shut you guys down. And then you started the group over because I've been following your path. Where are you at today with the group?
So just to go back and to go into the censorship before we go into Stand Up Michigan and what we evolved to and why we got kicked off, which we're going to talk about that today. We eventually just got kicked off by me reporting the news. Wasn't interviewing anybody. I was just reporting the news, and ABC, NBC, and Fox News was right behind me doing the same thing. But they booted me off Facebook in my group because I was advocating the spread of disease. So we'll get into that. But when you have that many people, join at once, I had people come into the group initially, a guy named Kevin, to really put up like admin and moderators, because at that time it was a hot issue and there was a lot of trolls on there and there was a lot of hate. And so we had to get those people off because they're basically there just to stir up everything, to get people to react. And there's hate comments and there's all this negativity. And I really wanted to build a positive movement, a nonviolent, bipartisan, positive movement. So we're really trying to control those things. In those first 3 days, it was like a mouth around an open fire hydrant. I mean, we were on there, we had a bunch of volunteers working 24/7 that basically gave up their life to support the movement and what we were trying to do. And all we want is to be told the truth. Because the governor initially, what she said, the reason that she took away our constitutional rights and freedom, which no governor in these United States should ever be able to just rule as a dictator. But she said initially that it was to flatten the curve, to not overwhelm the medical staff. So when she started first doing the quarantine, it made sense to us. I was like, yeah, we don't want to overwhelm. What happens if this spreads and starts wiping out society? We need the medical staff to not get overwhelmed. So we're going to do our part. But then she wouldn't release the data. All she talks about is cases and deaths, cases and deaths. Never released any of the hospital data, meaning how many hospitalizations were coming in and how many were you releasing? Because if the whole point was not to overwhelm the medical system, then how about the data to support that? Because what started to happen, and as the wool got pulled back from our eyes, we started to realize that, we flattened the curve. We flattened the curve so much that hospitals were starting to go out of business. They could not even staff their people anymore because nobody had any work. So people were getting laid off, people were getting fired, hospitals were shutting down. And so we started to think, and we started using common sense and going, okay, wait a minute. If your whole decision-making process was because to flatten the curve and we did that, why are you still bringing down the tyrannical hammer on Michigan? And she used what was called a blanket approach. I don't know if you're familiar, you're from the Quad Cities, so you're a little familiar with Michigan. We have the lower Michigan and we have the UP. UP is beautiful. That's why we call it pure Michigan. Upper North, all Michigan is beautiful, but upper northern Michigan and the UP is absolutely gorgeous. And it's very rural, meaning there's not a lot of people. So why did you have to use this, what's called a blanket approach with the whole state? We knew like the east side of the state with Detroit was getting hit pretty hard, but the rest of the state wasn't. So she basically shut down the entire state and put our economy into the ground. All right. And so we're going to talk about the effects of that, because we've always said from the beginning, the cure can't be worse than the problem. Even President Trump has said that. And so as we start to evolve the movement's grassroots. It's all organic. It just was all organic growth, which was amazing to go through this process. But by the end of that 5th day, we were already on a Zoom call with senators in the state of Michigan trying to get things done, to get things moving, to question the governors. So in a little is standing up, and 5 days later, we're already on a Zoom call with senators. And I can only imagine these senators when they got on, they're like, who are these guys? They grew to almost 400,000 people. All right, we're going to listen to them, but they really didn't believe the power of our movement yet. But as we would start to go down this journey, now the senators realized the power of our movement and what we're able to accomplish together as we the people, because we know the solutions have to come from us, we the people, not the government. All right. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty. And we're going to get our liberty back. So as we start to evolve this conversation, and I'll tell you about some of the things that we were able to do, is we want to activate our group. And when you have 380, 400,000 people, when you activate them, you can overwhelm systems, you can overwhelm polls, right? And so when we would do a call to action to our movement, we would have 100,000 people go to these senators' email boxes, and they would call, and we would overload their system. We would crash their server. So whenever these senators were getting ready to vote on whether or not to extend the governor's orders, we would activate our group to go there and say, no, don't do it. And that's what we were able to do. With the power of one can lead to the power of many. Just like BJ Palmer said, you never know what small act that you may say do tomorrow that may change the lives of millions tomorrow. And I believed in that quote, but to actually live and understand what can happen when one person stands up, the power of one, it can lead to the power of many. And when you have the power of many going towards a direction, going towards a goal, going towards a vision, amazing things can happen. And so as we start to evolve this journey down, Facebook, we would get some things that are saying, hey, this comment is, that goes against our community guidelines. And we were trying to clean it up because all the trolls out there were in there trying to stir things up. But what happened, two major things happened, is Kevin Skinner, who is my guy who helped me get this thing really rolling, he was doing a live broadcast to activate our members to go to these senators' emails and to call them. And he got banned from Facebook for going against Facebook's community guidelines. And all he was doing is giving people public information that you can get online, which is your senators, to activate them to call and do their constitutional rights and freedoms to voice their opinion to their elected officials. So he got banned. That was the first big one that got our hand slapped. The second one was at the end of April, 4 weeks after our movement started. A lot of you out there probably heard of Carl the barber. The barber in the state of Michigan who's been on Fox News, has been a lot of the media, who's decided to stand up, who continues to stand up in defiance of the governor. His case is going to go to the Supreme Court now. But I was at Carl the barber's reporting the news. And then I got the screenshot of it. It said, you go against our community guidelines by advocating the spread of disease. And literally a minute later, the entire group got shut down. Everything's gone. Everything that we did 4 to 5 weeks. We had over 16 million interactions in 4 weeks. That's a lot. So we would get almost 10,000 comments a second on that page. All the videos, all the posts, gone. Facebook has all the evidence. We have no access to it. So everything that we did in 4 weeks disappeared. We knew this was coming, and so we planned for it. So we were in the background trying to produce our website, which is standupmichigan.com. And then when we got shut down, we had to get it up and running because we had to start transferring people over because literally there was no warning. It just disappeared. And obviously everybody's personal profiles got lit up by all of our members. Like, where'd you guys go? I can't find it. And we were scrambling, and we founded another page called Stand Up Michigan on a Facebook page. You could tell that it's ours from the logo that you see in the background. There's a lot of opposition groups that are copycatting what we're trying to do. And there's opposition groups that are copycatting us to do horrible, hateful things behind the scenes. I mean, that's what we're dealing with right now. But that's what we were able to do, is transfer everybody to our new Facebook page, which we can control, and to get ourselves on other media, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, the whole ball game being in marketing. We did all that. So now we're slowly starting to build up to where we were before. I think we're at 80,000 followers right now, last time I checked this morning. Sorry, I ramble.
No, it's perfect because I brought you on the show to share. And for me, I want to get to the core of what you're doing up there in Michigan, and you being a medical professional. I think that's something that the governor and whoever's in higher positions, they should give you a lot more clout, and they should give you a lot more professional courtesy when it comes to what you're doing, because what you're doing is you're advocating for safe communities. You're advocating for freedom of truth. You're advocating for freedom of speech. You're advocating for Americans to be able to go to work. You're advocating for people to be able to remain healthy, both in mind and body. And I think that what you're doing is it's much needed. If you guys are watching this right now and you're finding value in what Garrett and I are discussing today, hashtag value in the comments and tell us where you guys are watching in from. And do me a big favor and hit the share button so more people can see what Garrett and I are discussing today, because there's so much that needs to be shared to keep our states economy's running in a positive fashion. And I think a lot of times people just don't know what to do. So they watch what I call the box God, which is our television, and they worship that thing. And they don't know how to think for themselves because somebody else is making decisions for them. But I think our next topic is after censorship is are these masks and I was always told, when we were like in kindergarten or first grade, like who's behind that false face, and it was about a mask. And the only mask that I ever thought was cool when I was growing up also was a mask that you'd wear for Halloween. And the only people that were wearing masks that I ever saw outside of that were like doctors, like in like a surgical environment. So now we have people, everybody from, 5-year-olds to 75-year-olds walking around in our society with these masks on, like it's the great savior for them or something. And they're staying away 6 feet from people. I think that there's a lot of media hype involved with that. I think there's a lot of misinformation for people doing it. I was actually, on my morning hike today, and I'm like, what if Garrett and I just decide to start like burn the mask day?
We would get clipped for advocating the spread of disease.
But
you're right, because this is where people have to wake up, right? And so a lot of people are fearful, and that's what's happening right now is a social backlash when you don't wear a mask, and people are actually shaming people for not wearing a mask. So I'm never going to hate on those people that wear a mask. They're literally afraid. That's why they're lashing out, because they really feel that mask is going to protect them. So what you have to do with fear, because we all know what fear stands for, false evidence appearing real. It doesn't exist. It only exists in our mind. So how do you get over your fears? Well, number one, you have to go through them. And number two, you have to build a belief system with repetition, with information, with unbiased information, right? When you can get information that doesn't have an agenda, like you called it the box God with the mainstream media, people need to turn that garbage off and actually start to talk about it. So what I've done over the past 2 days on the Stand Up Michigan Facebook page is what's called Lower the Fear. Let's talk about the mask. And I got information right in front of me that I found, number one, from the New England Journal of Medicine. This is not chiropractors talking about this. This is from a reputable source and a great article from the Center of Disease Control and the National Center for Immunization Research and Surveillance in Australia. This is all up-to-date research. And so I want to share with you and to all your viewers right now exactly what I shared with my 80,000 members over the last 2 days, so we can start lowering the fear, okay? So we'll go with the New England Journal of Medicine, which is May 21st, 2020. We know that wearing a mask outside healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection. Okay, let's talk about that again. Again, this comes from the New England Journal of Medicine. We know that wearing a mask outside healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection. Public health authorities define a significant exposure to COVID-19 as face-to-face contact within 6 feet with a patient with symptomatic COVID-19 that is sustained for at least a few minutes, and some more than 10, and they said even 30 minutes. The chance of catching COVID-19 from a passing interaction in a public space is therefore minimal. In many cases, the desire for widespread masking is a reflexive reaction to anxiety over the pandemic. So basically what they're saying is you're not going to catch this stuff just by going past each other in a store. The reason that people are using the mask is because it gives them a false sense of security. So they feel safe. Kind of like when you wear a seatbelt, and then seatbelts are safe. Don't get me wrong. I love wearing my seatbelt. But if I'm wearing a seatbelt ever since I started driving. It makes me feel safe. But if I take that seatbelt off and I drive, I get like anxiety because I don't have that safety measure put in place. That's my belief system. So I feel safer with that seatbelt on. There's no difference than with the mask. People feel safer with the mask. But here's what's going on. What is clear, however, is that the universal masking alone is not the solution. It states that a mask will not protect providers caring for a patient with active COVID-19 if it's not accompanied by meticulous hand hygiene, eye protection, gloves, and a gown. A mask alone will not prevent healthcare workers with early COVID-19 from contaminating their hands and spreading the virus to patients and colleagues. Focusing on universal masking alone may paradoxically lead to more transmission of COVID-19. It diverts the attention from implementing more common sense approaches like washing your hands.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle Live. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Imaging Services, Mahalo Wellness, Chiro Health USA, The Goodman Factor, Chiro Moguls, Local Gold, Chiro Thin, McCaffrey's Clinical Mentoring, and Chiropractic Rocks. Let's hustle.
You just muted yourself, by the way.
That's okay, because I got a lawn cutting guy going by my house right now. So I wanted to give you a chance to respond.
Gotcha. So yeah, the information that you're sharing is definitely important for people to pay attention to. I see people, and once again, there's no shame to be put on anybody for either way. Some people are obviously concerned for what's going on in their environment. Practice healthy habits. I think James Chestnut said it the best when he started his movement: eat well, think well, move well. And then I add in get adjusted. So practicing the chiropractic lifestyle is something that most people don't know about. We maybe see about 8% of the population of the United States of America. So for anybody out there that's thinking that they might have some type of health concerns or health needs, go see a chiropractor first. Get an exam, talk to them about any health concerns that you have, and see if the chiropractor can give you some advice on a healthy lifestyle. I think that those are things that are overlooked too in the media. They're not looking for solutions to tell people, hey, go find something least invasive. They're going right to the end of the game and they're saying, hey, go find a new drug, take this injection, do these things. And really what that's doing is it's putting a lopsided effect on what people think is healthy for their body to go through this. And I go hiking. I get vitamin D through sunshine. I drink half my body weight in ounces every day of water. I'm practicing healthy habits. I'm meditating every day. I write in a journal. I do a routine of things to make sure that I'm taking care of my mental capacity, because I know that as we get into the later parts of this conversation, we're going to talk about how suicide, depression, and overdose, and pharmacologically how some people are really backsliding right now because of the confusion that they have about something that was called flattening the curve of something called 19, that people don't have any type of information on what is a healthy solution for them. And I think that that's the most important thing that we can share with people, not only to stand up for your freedom and your rights, but what are healthy solutions for you to not believe the media hype that's being run by pharmaceutical companies. So let's talk health.
100% right. And let's talk about that before we move on, because, I always say, hey, no healthy body will bear disease and no unhealthy body will bear health. With COVID-19, we can see that it affects the elderly and the immunocompromised. Right. And so if that being said, and this is a virus that we have a 99% chance of living through, and we shut down the entire global economy for it. So is that going to be our new normal? I hate that word, by the way, new normal. This is not the new normal. If I have anything to do with it, this will not be the new normal. We are not going to be wearing masks for the rest of our life, especially when the medical and scientific research shows us why we should not. And so that is what we need to do with any disease process. I don't care what you're talking about, is you have to turn your body into an environment of greatness. And that's why initially I got into chiropractic. And I know we're going to go into chiropractic soon on our next interview that we do. But we know as chiropractors, we get the kind of get out of jail free card with the body. All we do as chiropractors is we take stress off the body. And when you take stress from a stressful situation, good things happen. I always tell all my patients, it's no different than a plug in an outlet. If you have too many plugs in the outlet, you're going to short circuit. You're going to have a symptom. You're going to have a dis-ease process. So our job as chiropractors is to motivate, inspire, educate, right? To let our patients make good decisions for themselves and then support them with whatever decision, because bottom line, it's our patients' bodies. We have no control over our patients. Whatever they want to do, we have to care for them, and we have to love on them, and we have to support their decisions. And we also have to hold them accountable if they're choosing the wrong decisions, but it's their body. That's the great thing about living in this great country. And that's one of the things that I have learned over the past 2 months is I took for granted my freedom. I did. until it got stripped away from me. And I was told where I can't go, what I can and can't buy, and I can't go and enjoy a meal. For the first time ever since this started, 7-8 weeks ago, I finally crossed a border in Indiana to go have a sit-down meal with my family. And I got teared up because I forgot what that felt like. Because we've been in quarantine and basically stripped away from our rights this entire time. And to be able just to go out to a restaurant and sit outside, I really realized what this movement is about. And if I was feeling that way, there's millions of other people feeling that way right now. And so that's why I will continue to stand up for not only Michigan, but for America, because I'm not going to do the definition of insanity. So our initial goals in our movement right now is to get us back to work as safe and as fast as possible. I was not, and that's what people like, you're against the quarantine. I was not against the quarantine in the beginning. I didn't know, like many other people, what this was. I was against when you weren't producing the data to show me why you took away our constitutional rights and freedoms. And she just announced that we can't do any Freedom of Information Acts FOIA requests to her or any of her staff until the end of June. Why can't we request the data? And so my movement, Stand Up Michigan, we got a resolution that is probably getting passed in the Senate to request the data, Governor. Why? Because I know if the data supported her narrative, it would be crammed down our throats every single day. It has not. She continues to evolve the conversation to cases and deaths. That's not what you said from the beginning. You said to flatten the curve. So
Yeah,
that's the accountability.
So misinformation has become the segue to imperialism and shutting down the way that people can thrive in our culture. I think that that's the real topic, is now people in our day-to-day lives, they're being stymied from thriving in a culture which we become, comfortable with as free citizens.
Brother, I'm sorry, you give me the chills when you say that. This is all of our fault. We all fell asleep on the watch. And by going through this experience, that's never going to happen again. I will not fall asleep. And all these little laws that are behind the scenes that allow these governors to pull from a 1945 law, that's what she's operating on, and that's what gives her executive powers and her to take away freedoms and bypassing the legislation process to basically act like a dictator because she wants. I don't think there's been a governor in the past that has declared state of emergencies as much as her in this short amount of time. She continues to declare, because when she declares a state of emergency, she has tyrannical rule. And we have all these businesses, the restaurants who have liquor licenses, these poor salon owners and barbers who have licenses, the massage therapists who have licenses, the medical professionals, the dentists, the chiropractors, all have licenses. And here's the thing. So you can't stand up because you'll get your license taken away. And there are some brave souls right now who are standing up in defiance of tyranny, but there's a lot of people still afraid. And that's where the common sense solutions with me, you depend on the dentists and the medical professionals to have sanitary measures to do trauma, to disease control, to make sure they're not spreading infections, and you still close them down. Those are the people that you continue to just open up and let them do their own job. Because there is dentists and everything that could not open during this time because she shut them down.
And here's the other part of this. Is they open up big box medical facilities.
Yep.
So they open big box stores, they open big box medical facilities, and they shut down the mom and pops operations of the world that are professionals.
Okay, yep. Let's talk about the small businesses now, because now we're evolving the conversation. You get me all fired up. All right. So with the small businesses, that's where all your tax revenue comes from, right? If there's no small businesses, there's no taxes being paid. We are so in trouble in the state of Michigan. That's why I took so much flack in the beginning, because the data was starting to come through and I'm, look, you got a 98, 99% chance of living this thing. We can't shut down our global economy. We can't shut down our state's economies and our country's economy, because what's going to happen from the economy crashing is going to be a whole heck of a lot worse. And I was on my soapbox and boy, oh boy, did I get attacked. And I was just talking to you before the interview. I've never experienced that much negativity and hate in my life. I had people calling me on unknown numbers saying they're going to slit my kids' throats, right? No father, no husband, no human being should have to hear those things. And that was all in the first 2.5 weeks. It was overwhelming to go through that. And it's because people were afraid. But now we're starting to slowly see the ramifications of these small businesses being closed. We are losing family businesses. We are losing generational family businesses. They can't stay open. And then we're going to allow a restaurant, and for all my restaurant owners out there, you all know this, you really think you can operate your business at 25% capacity, at 50% capacity? There's no way. Some of these restaurants can't even do it at 75% capacity. And that's what we're allowing. Oh, now you can open at 25%. And these business owners are like, we're done. They're getting shut down everywhere. And so now suicides have gone through the roof. I did a podcast interview with Mark Meckler, one of the guys who I think founded the Tea Party movement. Amazing individual. And he said the hotline had a 10,000% increase in calls, the suicide hotline. So all these people have all this built up frustration and anger, and they're starting to do stupid things, right? They're starting to not think, because we know when you're in fear and you're stressed, it bypasses your mind, it bypasses your judgment. And so that's why suicides are on the rise. Domestic violence is increasing. So now we have moms and dads that are beating each other in front of who? Their kids. And these kids are witnessing that. So you're not telling me that those kids aren't going to have lasting scars? And we all know about the substance abuse that's going on right now. I see it in my neighborhood. People are drinking more than they ever have before. People are starting to fall off the wagon, right? Because people are going to fill those voids with self-destructive behavior when you're taking away their constitutional rights and freedoms, when you're taking away their purpose. You know, our poor veterans, people that suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, that went over to war for us to fight for our freedoms, come back, they need a purpose. Putting them inside with nothing to do is the worst environment that you could ever do for any single one of them. They need to get out. They have to have a purpose. So now all these veterans who need this work, who need these jobs, who need these freedoms, we took that away from them. And that's what kills me the most, is we have over 1 million men and women who've given the ultimate sacrifice for this country, who gave it their lives for our constitutional rights and freedoms. And we'll just take them away. I'm not going to honor them that way. I refuse, especially when you're not using common sense leadership, because I truly believe that leaders should inspire. They should motivate. They should inspire people to bring out their very best. Leaders do not lead with fear. Leaders do not lead with force. That's tyranny.
Well, you brought up a lot of things that really touched me as well. I fly 50 times a year. I'm constantly advocating for the chiropractic profession. And what it's done to my chiropractic community has been unprecedented. There's probably 30% of the chiropractors that are in the workforce are not going to reopen their business, just like you're saying, these restaurants. You know, it took me, I was actually on my way to Denver looking for a haircut. And I was, you know, through the Underground Railroad of finding a barber. And as I was going through that process of looking for a barber, I actually had to go back to Grand Junction and find somebody that would actually cut my hair without me coming in with a face mask, because I refused to wear a face mask. And the person that used to cut my hair, I was just like, can I come in without a face mask? They're like, no. I go, well, I'm not coming back in. And I think that we have to, once again, use our dollars to show what we will stand for. And we have to, who remains in the dollar position remains in the control. And you're saying some of these businesses aren't able to open up to capacity. I say, you know what? Find them. Be like Carl the barber and take the hits, and go out there and open your damn business and go to work. Go to work.
Stand up, baby.
Go to work. Because we know our last topics that are on here are domestic violence, as you touched on, the rise of addiction, suicide, and overdose. And these are real things that hit the core of the community. These are not only white collar workers, these are blue collar workers. These are stay-at-home moms. These are soccer moms. These are, you know, people that are contributing to their families. And the people that are the core, like you said, it's not just the mom and dads that are beating each other. It's the kids that get PTSD that will grow up into a future that remember this stuff, that it causes these emotional scars. And it
100%.
it tears the moral fiber of that family apart. And I think that when we think about that, we need more truth, we need more freedom, and we need more God in our hearts. And I think that when we think about these things, Dr. Garrett, we have so much at stake right now. And I've seen the numbers. If we don't course correct this now, it could be a decade of despair where petty crime increases, safety measures decrease, people on the front lines, the public service, like the cops, the fire department, they don't want this shit. They're going to step away. They're going to step away from their jobs and not be advocates to keeping freedom anymore or safety.
You hit it right there, because I went through the police academy while I was at college. I was going to become a police officer. And then my path went a different direction. I got cut from the Bears and said, you know what, I want to become a doctor. That's why I became a chiropractor at the time. But knowing that the police, just like what you just said, they have been put in the middle of this thing, right? And the domestic violence, that is the most dangerous call for a police officer to go on, meaning that's the call where police officers are more likely to get shot and to die. And so we put these poor men and women who serve us every single day, who put on that uniform, who put on that badge to serve and protect, we put them in this situation to possibly die. So only imagine what their families are going through, right? Wondering if their husband or wife will ever come back, their son or daughter will ever come back. These are the things that our society has evolved into, unfortunately. You said 30% of chiropractors are going out of business from this?
Mm-hmm.
I have not, like, since I started this movement, I have not once talked about my own personal business, because this movement is bigger than me. This movement is about all of my members. This movement is about you and all of your listeners. This movement is bigger than Michigan. It's about all Americans. And I've never talked about my business because I never wanted the spotlight to be on me, because I don't want it, even though it is, unfortunately. But I did not hear that stat of 30% of chiropractors. My business is down 75%. And like, I don't know what's going on in a lot of other states, but all chiropractors in the state of Michigan could do is see emergency patients. Meaning our role in this was only to see a patient whose last option was to go to the hospital. So there was no income coming in from emergency patients, especially when you're a wellness chiropractor, when you're pediatric chiropractor, right? And so our business just, I mean, I had to let one of my doctors go. I couldn't afford them.
And here's the thing, Doc. You all, just like the big box medical facilities, signed a Hippocratic oath to do no harm. Like you would ever go against your ethical standard for treating somebody because of a mandate. You would never go against your ethical standard of treating somebody because of a mandate. You would only do the best because of the Hippocratic oath is to do no harm. And like the police officers, what you were considering doing is to protect and serve. So when you take the wings and you clip them from protecting and serving, you put them into a force of harm. Now we are very confused as a culture. And now we don't believe anything now, because the medical professionals are told that they're going to have to believe in something that they don't believe in. And chiropractors don't believe in the stuff anyways.
Yep, at 100%. The whole narrative has changed. And so that's why we have to continue to lead and inspire and to inform. And so that's kind of what Stand Up Michigan, our kind of mission statement is. Number one is we're going to care for people. It almost sounds kind of like chiropractic philosophy. We're going to care for people, we're going to inform people, and then we're going to activate them to do the right things. And so that's what we're designing right now, is what's called Freedom Festivals. We went against the governor's orders a week and a half ago, and we held a Freedom Festival. There was almost 1,500 to 2,000 people there, where we told all of our members to come. And we had a big festival. We had speakers come in, we had music, and our whole purpose was to bring people together so they could go to this local community and support the local businesses who decide to stand up and open. And we achieved that. And so now we're creating a summer tour to do that throughout the state of Michigan, because all these festivals are getting canceled. There are huge festivals strategically located through the state of Michigan that every year those local businesses depend on that revenue. It's not there anymore. So how are they going to survive? So what we're going to do is we're going to come in with our Freedom Festival and activate our members throughout the state of Michigan and the country. We had somebody drive in from Maine, 22 hours to come to that Freedom Festival. That's how big this movement is getting. And that's how many people want to be a part of this thing. So that's what I'm starting to realize. This is bigger than Michigan. And so as these Freedom Festivals start catching, right, and we start opening these Freedom Festivals in these local businesses, and activate our community to come and support these local businesses, because it's our goal right now is to be the fastest state to recovery. That's a big goal because Michigan is getting driven into the ground right now. The whole lower part of Michigan, mid to lower Michigan, is shut down still. You can still do takeout. You can still do a couple things, but all the hair salons, the massage therapists, the chiropractors are still can only see, emergency patients. They just lifted that, I think, a couple days ago. But we have all these businesses that are they're struggling. They're all going out. And so that's our kind of vision as we go forward with this, is start helping these local communities and to start citizens petitions to make sure no governor has that amount of power again. So we're actually starting to amend and trying to amend our state constitution so this never happens again. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, no governor should have that much power, ever.
Well, my final remarks are, let's open America back up. Let's get people back to work. If everybody goes back to work, there's not enough jail cells to hold everybody, and there's not enough tickets to write. So everybody just go back to work. Do what you find is necessary for you to be successful and to stabilize your personal freedoms and to keep the economy open for your state and my state and this whole country. Are there any closing comments that you'd like to share with anybody today?
Just to piggyback on what you just said, stand up, open up, and we will show up to support you. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to be the lantern in the darkness of today's challenges. And I know it's dark right now for a lot of people, but always understand this. It is darkest right before what? The sunrise. The light at the end of the tunnel is getting brighter. Stand up, stand tall, and we're all going to get through this together. God bless every single one of you out there.
Thank you for being my guest today. If you guys are watching this on replay, hashtag replay in the comments. If you found some value from this conversation today, hashtag value in the comments, and let us know where you're watching in from. And if you do us a big favor, just hit the big share button there and share this with your page and your community so people know what's happening right now in Michigan and in this beautiful country of the United States of America. Dr. Garrett, have a great day, and I will talk to you soon, okay?
All right, brother, you too, man. Thank you for having me on.
See you soon.
Thank you for listening to Chiro Hustle Live. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.